Hendon, Middlesex, July 1911. Morning light comes in flat through a small sash window, turning the wash basin white, and the chair back to a dark bar. The house breathes the coal, the neighbourhood always breathes. Someone downstairs moves a kettle. A clock ticks, not fine furniture, just the sort that keeps time for people who must keep time. He is Leonard. Leonard Frank Portway. 13 years old, if you ask the paper line, that will be written not in Hendon at all, but half a world away. He stands at the door with his cap, turns it once, sets it straight. His books press against his ribs, a strap across copybooks, edges softened by use. He calls a goodbye into the next room. A woman's voice answers, close, tired, alert to every absence. The latch lifts. He steps into Hendon air that smells of yesterday's fire. Tram wires hum. A milk cart rattles. A dog noses at a doorstep and sneezes coal dust. Leonard turns in the direction he always turns for school, his pace the quick, respectful mark of a boy who must not be late. Past a grocer's that opens early, past a frontage where the shutters still hold, past numbers that are easy to miss if you don't live here. Hendon is changing, brick going up, rail and road adjusting to life that arrives faster each year. But at this hour, the streets are still private, held by the people who belong to them. He walks. On one corner, a paper boy runs his thumb down a stack and shouts headlines the neighbourhood ignores unless something terrible has happened. On another, a woman with a pail throws water into the gutter and watches it take dust to the drain. Leonard steps around the fan of wet and nods. He is a boy who nods. He knows the cost of being seen to be good, and he wears goodness like his cap, straight and plain. Ahead, the world opens a little. Space between houses, a glimpse of distance. If you stand on the higher ground, you can feel the reservoir in your bones even when you cannot see it. The wide water they call the Welsh Harp, the place that draws people on a bright Sunday and draws fear on winter nights when searching men walk its margins with poles and ropes. But it is summer, and the day is tidy, and school is a bell waiting to be obeyed. Leonard lengthens his stride. No one remarks the moment he should turn, and does not. No one writes the second his footsteps lose their pattern. The city is a mouth, and he is a crumb. It is too easy for a boy to disappear into its teeth. By evening, the rooms are different. The kettle sounds sharp. The clock erases its own hours. The chair is an accusation. You are empty. The woman who answered his goodbye stands still for too long and then begins to move, because movement is what mothers can do when their hands cannot reach a child. She asks neighbours. She walks the path herself, with eyes that gather every looseness, boys who loiter, men who watch, doorways that hold shadows when they should hold brooms. The light goes and she carries his name to the police, to faces that know how to nod at grief. In the station the ledger waits, names go into it, so do dates and ages and descriptions that try to make a person into lines that can be remembered by other people's eyes. There will be a description for Leonard. There will be a note that says, on way to school. It will be carried beyond Hendon. It will be carried so far that after 2 months, a policeman who has never seen Hendon will read the entry and understand enough to be sorrowful. A boy, 13, missing. Days gather. The search tightens. Someone thinks of water, as they always do in a city that has learned to fear it. And men who are kind to mothers, but professional with ropes, talk in low voices about dragging. Not yet. Not while the sun has something to say about luck. Not while anyone can say, perhaps he ran. Perhaps he is with a friend. Perhaps a letter will come. The word Christmas is still too far away to carry the weight it will carry. But the city knows the shape of a tragedy before the words are written about it. The Welsh Harp keeps its own counsel. At night the water is black, and the banks receive footsteps, constables, anglers, courting couples who think they are alone. By winter, men will stand with poles at the edge of a pond and pull hooks through mud in slow, hopeless lines. By winter, the search will have become a ritual the living perform for the dead. For now, there is only absence. A cap that is not on a peg. A strap for copybooks that has no work to do. A chair that stays where it is and does not complain. The way furniture does when it senses the house is learning how to endure. In another country entirely, in an office where the air is hot and strange with flies, an officer of Victoria Police will open a file and write a line that shortens a life to what can be handled by someone who never met the boy at all. Portway, Leonard Frank, 13 years, missing for 2 months, disappeared on way to school, Hendon, London, England. The ink dries, the file closes, the world remains exactly as it was. A mother waits, a neighbourhood averts its eyes, and a waterline in northwest London remembers every name it has ever been asked to keep. Hendon takes the day as if it has done this forever, with the steady habits of a place that runs on time and duty. A boy dresses with the practiced economy of someone who understands what must happen before the bell rings. He tightens the strap that keeps his copybooks together, checks that the pencil still holds a point, lifts his cap from its hook, and calls a simple goodbye that makes a home sound complete. A reply comes from the next room, the tone of someone who keeps a household by watching clocks and doorways. He steps out. He walks the route children walk when school calls. His pace is the careful, respectful pace that promises to arrive before the first line is written on the slate. The neighbourhood moves with him in small, ordinary acts. Bread carried from ovens, a broom clearing a threshold, a barrow wheel crossing a joint in the pavement with a click. He does not hurry because the morning is already efficiently arranged. He is a part of that arrangement, a reliable piece. No one notices the instant the pattern breaks. The corners, the crossings, the shortcuts other boys swear by, the places where a person can be delayed or turned aside, none of them glue themselves to a watcher's memory. The day advances and the door a boy left behind keeps a quiet place for his return. When the clock marks the hour he should be home, the house takes on a special stillness, the sort that recognises a particular absence and begins to study it. The chair at the table looks larger. The hook on the wall is too eager to be useful. A name is said again, then again, with different weight. A mother goes to look. She follows the path a second time with the strange authority of someone who knows every stone and still thinks she might have missed something. She asks and receives neighbourly answers. Yes, the boy passed earlier. Yes, he looked as he always does. No, nothing was amiss that anyone remembers. She carries the name to the men whose work is to write names when the world loses track of them. In the station, pages are made to receive particulars, and particulars arrive. A boy's name, an age, the words that reduce a whole morning to its core, on his way to school. The words are plain so that other people can carry them easily in their heads. The first night draws its circle, doors close but not to sleep. Someone sits and listens for any sign that might sound like steps on the walk. The neighbours are kind in the way neighbourhoods are kind when the terror is not yet official. They send a boy to walk the route again. They go themselves. They blink at the places where a child can vanish simply by being small in a large city. Each person comes back with the same report. The path is clear. The path is empty. Day 2 is a work day turned into a search. The house that once warmed itself on routine now lives by questions. Who saw him? What day was it? What time precisely? The questions are the sort that keep hands busy and hearts close to what can still be done. There are people who know exactly whom to address at the station, and those people arrive and ask the right questions on behalf of a mother who holds herself in the manner of someone who will not let the worst be named out loud. A description is taken down. The description is the city's new handle on the boy. The city will try to lift him by it. By the week's end, the lines on the station ledger grow into short paragraphs. Sightings that do not hold, rumours that resolve into nothing, offers to help, reminders that patrols have walked in places where boys go when they mean to be unseen. The practical men have a practiced way of being hopeful without promising anything. They speak in terms of radius and likelihood, They say, "It is still early." A mother stands with quiet balance while other people name probabilities. She answers every question plainly. She repeats his name whenever someone needs to hear it. At home, the work of waiting is tidy and deliberate. The table is set as usual and the cup holds its place because removing it would be worse. It is not superstition, it is a firm insistence on order. The sense that order itself will call a boy home is a faith that does not require anyone to say a word of prayer aloud. The city's doors open and close. The schoolroom takes attendance and marks a boy absent. Children trade stories with the harmless excitement of people who do not yet know what absence becomes when it continues. The evening comes again, and the lamps mark the hours in pools. A woman sits within one of those pools and listens for the one sound she knows better than her own voice. The sound does not arrive. Days settle into the shape that always follows. A family's not rich, it is respectable. Respectability is not a decoration, it is a scaffold, and that scaffold holds as she makes each necessary visit, back to the station, to the streets where boys travel, to the shopkeepers who notice regular customers, and the watchful faces who sit on steps and see more than anyone thinks. She retraces the map, the way a needle retraces a cut that must heal. The wound refuses to close. At the station, the officers note the passage of time, the way they always do, with a tightening of language. They order the routes into rings and the rings into the city's larger shapes. They ask the necessary questions about the home, whether there was a quarrel, whether a boy had ever gone off on his own, whether anyone new had lately appeared. The answers are steady and simple, and the steadiness itself is evidence. The words on the paper become a portrait the city can recognise, and men are sent with that portrait in their heads. The second week goes, then the third. Somewhere the intuition that governed the first searches gives way to the sense that cities can misplace even careful boys. It is not that hope departs, it is that hope discovers it needs method. Method means the slow grinding application of muscle and measure. Method is also merciless in the way it removes illusions. People who work by method begin to speak of distances that end at water. The mother listens to these discussions without interruption. The men in uniform do not alarm her with dramatic talk. They speak in their trained voices, neutral and exact, the voices used to bring hard tasks into the range of human hands. A boy's name is said again, now by other mouths. A simple sentence carries itself into rooms where it has never been spoken before. He was on his way to school, he did not arrive, and now the city carries the weight with her. The next phase feels different, not because anyone announces a change, but because the work of finding a boy begins to collect its own paperwork elsewhere. People who have never met him will ask about him by name. The chain that begins at a small station desk and a thin description stretches farther than most families ever imagine their lives will stretch. 2 months become a mark on an official page. The distance from one home to one school becomes a problem far larger than any local geography should allow. The officers walk the same questions into new rooms. They speak to people who keep records of children, of movements, of tickets, of departures. They ask whether any boy of the age and description has moved through the points that take a person out of one life and into another without telling anyone. They do not say these things unkindly. They say them because the city's experience has taught them to assume nothing. The mother answers every question with the same measured clarity. Her steadiness is a form of strength no one applauds because it is necessary. The neighbourhood changes the way neighbourhoods always change when a child is missing. It learns to narrate the same day over and over in fragments. Where he was last certainly seen, where he might have turned, who walked behind him at a distance, whether there was a voice, whether anyone heard it. The fragments do not make a new picture. They sharpen the outlines of the picture everyone already has. The hardly noticed happenstances of one morning now seem too large. Someone reports a door half open on a street that keeps its doors tightly shut. Someone else says that on that very morning, a man no one recognised leaned on a fence and watched. Those details are the city's way of repenting for not watching closely enough. In the first place, the officers write them down. They know the pattern all too well. After the fact, every corner is ominous. The weeks do not stop. Letters go out because letters are a way to expand the city's reach. A name travels in envelopes to places where desks and ledgers multiply everything. One of those places is so far away that its heat and flies are part of the room where a clerk opens mail and reads with seasoned care. A boy's particulars cross the world and are copied in a short set of lines. A name is written in ink that dries in air not at all like London's. A brief account fixes him in bureaucratic language. 13, Hendon missing 2 months, on the way to school. The clerk closes the file with the practiced motion of someone who keeps other people's grief in order. Back in Hendon, the season begins to tip. People speak of the reservoir with the same unspoken hesitation they always use when they discuss water as a place where bad news hides. The men responsible for the more difficult forms of searching say nothing grand. They look at the calendar and measure the balance of daylight and work. When the day for it comes, the task is carried out with the routine solemnity of people who do a brutal thing for the sake of the living. The water is cold even before winter makes it iron. The tools are what they have always been: lines, hooks, poles, a method that looks cruel to those who have never seen it, and looks honest to those who know that sometimes truth sits at the bottom and will not come up unless you reach down and take it. The mother is not there when the first passes are made. This is not cruelty, it is a different kind of kindness. The men keep their own counsel on the bank and do the work with competence. They do not shout, they do not speculate. They pull and lay out and pull again in patient sweeps that have waited for weeks to be necessary. Others stand back as they must. Everyone knows what the discovery would mean. Everyone knows, too, what it will mean if there is no discovery. The day ends with the honest exhaustion of manual work. The men coil their lines and speak to the officers in the same low tones they used in the morning. Nothing today. Tomorrow, they say, we go again. The newspapers notice. They always notice when the work of finding a child becomes the work of searching water. Lines appear in columns on pages that will be read between breakfast and the day's labour. The language is formal and spare. It reports that the police are now dragging a pond in the district, that the boy has been missing since the summer, that all inquiries have been made. Names are printed with careful exactness. The mother sees those words when someone shows her, and she reads the sentence about the water and folds the page and keeps it with the other scraps, because keeping things is one of the ways she refuses to let the world loosen its grip on her son. The city moves around this fixed point the way it always does. It is not hard-hearted, it is multiple. A tram rounds a bend, a bell marks an hour. Men argue in doorways about wages. Children run in a lane and do not know why grown faces glance aside. The officers keep the ledger up to date. It does not swell with new hope, but it does not close. The people on the bank of the pond come back at the agreed hour and repeat their method. They vary the lines and make a different pattern over the mud. They measure their work by the yard, because a yard can be counted, and grief cannot. In the schoolroom, a master writes a list. He pauses at one name because it is the right thing to do. He keeps his tone ordinary, because the ordinary is how a room full of children can be kept from the kind of fear that empties faces. He instructs the class to open their books. The children do, and the sound of pages is a better answer to sorrow than any sentence he could compose. By the time the leaves have fallen and the days ask for lamps earlier, the case has settled into that heavy category where police experience and parental endurance live together without illusions. The officers are polite without being encouraging. They keep looking because that is their work. The mother keeps bringing the house to order because that is hers. Between those two steadinesses, the city maintains its shape and waits for the one thing it cannot manufacture, the small mercy of knowledge. The year turns, New dates take their corners on the station wall. The pond freezes and thaws and freezes again. The men who dragged it the first time have calluses that do not go away. The words in the ledger grow tighter. Brief notes, checked and initialed, record each action. Nothing is thrown aside, not even the small statements that seem to come from nowhere, because patterns sometimes make themselves from exactly those scraps. The family continues to answer every inquiry, and if the answers have grown fewer, it is because the questions have grown fewer too. A mother keeps the chair against the table and the hook free. Order remains a petition no one can refuse. No one says publicly what everyone knows. Absence is turning into the state of things, not a pause within them. The case becomes the sort that lives at the back of a desk drawer and then comes out again when some other matter jogs it loose. A boy holds his place on lists that do not empty as quickly as the city wishes. When a new year arrives, the officers close the old ledger gently and begin the new one. And somewhere on the first pages, a name is written again, with calm script, as if the hand that writes it refuses to falter. The writing of names is how the city keeps faith with the lost. The police habit of following every thread draws them into rooms that have nothing to do with Hendon, except that they are part of the larger fabric that catches wanderers and keeps count. A ticket clerk who minds his counter with pride answers questions about boys travelling alone. A man who checks school registers in another district writes back to say the name does not appear. A woman who keeps parish lists in good order searches the book in which she records the small movements of people who ask the church for help. Each answer is simple and exact. Each answer spends itself for the sake of a family that will not stop. There are days when the ordinary acts of life feel like a strategy, not a routine. A fire is laid not because there is leisure to enjoy it, but because warmth is one of the few things that can be put in the way of the cold that creeps into rooms where long waiting has taken up residence. A pot is set with deliberate attention, and the steam that rises from it is an announcement that the house intends to continue. These domestic acts are not ceremony. They are discipline. They make a claim on time itself. They say, days can be built even when they refuse to obey. The winter drags. Police speak less. They are not men given to speech at the best of times. They sign their names to lines that show they went where they said they would go and asked what they said they would ask. They receive the same answer from most places, nothing to report. The solid weight of those nothing to report lines is a kind of knowledge. It tells them what cannot be true. It refuses to say what is. A mother learns to read those lines, the way someone reads the face of a doctor who says he can do nothing more and means that he's done everything possible. The file thins and thickens without drama. It thins when weeks pass without a word. It thickens when some report arrives from far off, when a boy's name comes up because someone somewhere thought they saw a face they cannot forget and wrote a letter. The police carry that letter to a door and ask a choreographed set of questions and come back to write another clean paragraph. Not our boy. These clean paragraphs accumulate until they feel like a grave of their own, built from the diligence of people whose job requires that they never call a case finished unless the facts themselves do it for them. The pond is left for a time because even the stoutest teams cannot live forever on repetition. Then it is visited again because repetition is the point. The patience that water demands must be matched or water will keep what it has been given. The method is no easier in March than it was in December. It is only more necessary. Mud sucks at boots, ropes bite hands. A man's breath shows at his lips in grey puffs that look like resigned speech. Those who do this work understand that it changes nothing to talk, so they do not. The city speaks in other ways. Someone brings bread. Someone else mentions a new inspector come to the station who has a habit of asking the sort of questions that frequent officers asked years ago and now only rookies ask, questions about possibilities everyone else has already chased down. Sometimes this helps, because the habit of knowing too much can blind old eyes. Sometimes it only tires the men who have been doing the job since the first week. No one argues. The name is said again. The new man learns to pronounce it right. Families with their own griefs make room for another. They do not say so aloud. They make the room by folding one more story into the list they carry silently. People in a city share misfortunes the way they share weather. They endure it together and do not claim a special share unless they must. The mother moves among these people without asking anything more than courtesy and time. She receives both. She accepts each with the same steady grace she has shown since the first night. When spring properly arrives, the file behaves as files always do. It remains exactly itself. The season does not supply news. It supplies light, and men working in light search better. There are fields of inquiry left, train guards, coaches, new shops with new ledgers, masters who have come to town and do not know last year's names. Each is worked through. Each sharpens the outline of what the city already knows and cannot prove. The year turns again toward the month that once held a boy's simple walk to school. Anniversaries have a way of making the air thick, even in rooms where no one marks them aloud. The date carries a different weight when the clock reaches the hour that began everything. The mother does not speak about it. She knows what it is. She lays out a cup as she always does and dusts the hook as a woman dusts everything she owns when she is not rich but respectable. It is not a shrine. It is maintenance. She keeps the house because keeping the house is a way of refusing to move the story along by herself. So the story does not move. It holds its line in the station ledger and on the lips of men who mean to keep their word about trying. It holds its line in the speech of women at the pump who lower their voices just a little when they name the mother. It holds its line in the file across the world that contains 5 pages and a short index line that says enough to tell people who never saw the boy why they should care. And it holds its line where no index can reach, in the unarguable physical fact that a space once filled is now empty. Then the city, which never stops, goes on doing what it has promised to do for every name written in its books. It does not forget. Forgetting would be easy. It is easier than dragging water in winter and asking polite questions of strangers who never want to be asked. But forgetting is not the habit here. The habit is to keep the column open and write a fresh line whenever the world offers even a small chance to write one. The mother fits her life to that habit. She opens her door each morning, does the necessary work, and walks to the station when she must. Not to demand miracles, but to help other people fulfill the obligations they took when they wrote her son's name, where everyone could see it. Some stories announce themselves with a final chapter. This one does not. It remains in the company of cases that define themselves by their refusal to be finished, and it draws its meaning from exactly that refusal. A boy leaves a door one summer morning to go to school. The sentence ought to have an ordinary verb to follow it. Arrives, studies, returns. Instead, it finds the one verb that destroys all the easy ones. Vanishes. People do not like that verb. They call it unhelpful, melodramatic, unscientific. So the city writes other words in its ledgers. Missing, absent, not located. Those words are tidy. They let the pages stay clean. But what they mean is what everyone already knows. We cannot finish the sentence that began with a boy and a strap of books. Police habits exist to fight that verb. They keep a ledger. They write letters. They speak to other keepers of lists. They drag water and open drawers and return to old conversations without embarrassment. They do this for years if they must, and often they must. The people who live with those habits do not wear their devotion on their sleeves. They keep it in the square neatness of their handwriting and the understatement of their short reports. If someone ever finds the one piece that produces a conclusion, that person will write it down with the same steady hand, and the line will look exactly like all the other lines, and that will be a mercy. It will not be sensational. It will be exact. Until then, a mother continues. The city's respect for her is quiet. No one asks her to put away the habits that keep the household ordered. They know what it means when she dusts the hook and lays a cup. They do not call it sentimental. They call it life. She attends to the duties that make a season pass without disintegrating. She keeps the one thing she can keep, the manner in which she refuses to let the absence dictate squalor. The phrase respectable home is not a phrase on a certificate. It is a practice. She keeps it meticulously. Children grow around an empty place. They're told to be careful, and they are. They learn how to name the fear that walks the edges of their streets, without turning the fear into a god. They learn to come home by the route that is expected of them and say their names clearly when adults call. Schools continue. Masters set lines to be copied. A boy's name is written on a page and then silence. The class learns how to sit in that silence without throwing glances. They learn that silence can be honourable. Across the water, a thin file rests in a cabinet where other lives have left their traces. The file is not a novel. It is 5 pages, that is all. But inside those 5 pages is a city's stubbornness to not let a name drop into the dark. Inside those 5 pages is the fact that a mother's perseverance set other men moving in rooms that are as far from Hendon as the map can put them. Inside those 5 pages is a sentence that reduces everything to the bones so that clerks and officers have something firm to lift. 13. Missing for 2 months, on way to school. The bald insistence of that phrasing is an act of care. Time does what it always does. It becomes ordinary. The extraordinary thing is that the case does not. It holds its power to insist upon decency in rooms that once had only routine in them. It teaches the station to keep certain drawers a little nearer to hand. It trains the men who come up under older men not to laugh at the cases that sit without moving. It trains them to say the name when they open the drawer and to say it with the same quiet gravity the first writers used. That is not ceremony either. It is good practice. If an answer were to come, it would not be a trumpet. It would be an entry, a signature, a date, a margin note. It would be a hand on a page and a nod to a woman who kept her household so that the police could keep this ledger. It would end with a sentence so simple that only those who laboured would hear its weight. The sentence would begin the way all the great ones do in this work. Found. It has not arrived. The city remains ready to write it. People imagine that memory is the work of monuments. In places like this, memory is the work of ledgers and housekeeping. A boy's name sits where it was written and remains legible. A mother keeps straight lines in a room because to abandon straightness would be to confess that the world is now only a heap. The city honours both. It honours them by keeping the drawer in which a file rests close and by maintaining the habit of attention that distinguishes decent places from careless ones. And so the story lives in the present tense because it does not close. It is not a string of documents exactly. It is a life that continues in the active stance of people refusing to let a life be lost to paper. The verbs here are not dramatic. They are verbs of duty. Keep, check, ask, write, return, knock, speak, and above all, remember. The case is not concluded, but the city is faithful. Faithfulness in the absence of finality is the nearest thing to justice that can be placed on a table and left for all to see. The year refuses drama. It moves as it always moves, and the case keeps its place within it. What changes now is the way time lays a skin over everything. The sharpness of the first weeks has worn down to the steady grain of habit, and habits are what keep work honest when headlines have gone. Officers come and officers go, and each learns quickly that a station's character is not measured by its arrests alone, but by its fidelity to names that have no easy ending. A new man is shown the drawer where certain files sit so they can be reached without fuss. He learns to speak each name clearly before he reads. It is a small discipline, but small disciplines are the only sort that last. The months teach everyone the same lesson. What can be counted must be counted, and the rest must be carried. The men who keep ledger lines straight continue to visit places where lists are made. Schools that enter children's names on term days missions that keep careful records of meals served, lodging houses that note who pays for a bed and who leaves at dawn without a word. The answers remain steady. No, the boy has not appeared under his own name. No, there has been no child deposited by a stranger with a story that falls apart under questioning. Each negative lines up with the others in clean ink, and the white space around them is the only place where the ache shows. The house where the boy once set down his cap keeps its command of order. The floorboards hold their shine because they are scrubbed on the day they have always been scrubbed. The hearth receives coal measured out in a small scuttle that never pretends to be more than it is. The hook on the wall stands ready. That readiness is not superstition. It is an insistence that the world present itself as it should, even when it will not. Respectable is the word a neighbourhood uses when it wants to say there is dignity here without parading it. The mother does not adjust her pace to win praise. She holds to her pace because time must not be permitted to teach her shabby habits. Spring arrives, and the pond loses its hard edge. Men go back with ropes and quiet faces because repetition makes a map as surely as new information does. Each pass across the bed of water erases doubt more thoroughly than speech can do. If there were a discovery, there would be a sequence as old as the practice, summoning, measuring, the careful chain from bank to coroner's table. That sequence does not come. The men coil their lines with a neatness that keeps a crew fit for the next order to search, and they walk away without ceremony. Work done cleanly is its own finish. It does not need applause. Elsewhere in the city, habit keeps the case from dissolving into rumour. It is not allowed to become that tale told with a lift of the eyebrow whenever a child is late to table. It remains a record. The difference is important. A record makes obligations. A tale makes gestures. The station chooses obligations. The weeks are marked by the quiet exchange of forms, requests for confirmations, answers that begin with regret and end with clarity. The paper is light in the hand, but the weight of it accumulates in drawers and in consciences. It is an honest weight. It keeps people upright. Summer comes again, and with it the day that matches the one everyone remembers too well. The schoolroom sets out its slates, the streets fill with the sounds of mornings, and the clock steps through its hours as if it has not been asked to teach anyone this particular lesson. In the station, there is no official ritual for anniversaries of absence, yet the older men look once at the page they know by heart before they move on to the living business of the day. They are not sentimental. They are precise. Precision is what respect looks like in their trade. News from far-off offices arrives seldom and without flourish. When it does, it speaks in the modest certainties of people who mind their own districts well. No trace under the name. No boy matching the particulars lodged or discharged from the institutions that keep careful count. The overseas file sits with its 5 pages and does the one job it was built to do: hold the shape of a life reduced to details anyone can carry in the head. The distance between Hendon and that desk is long. The line between them is unbroken. On certain evenings, the neighbourhood measures itself by how it remembers. Nothing public happens. There is no meeting, no petition, no gathering under lamps. There is the courtesy of ordinary speech, the way women ask after each other's work, the way men make room on a bench without asking questions that cannot be answered. This is not indifference. It is the only sustainable form of care in places where grief must live alongside bread and rent. The mother moves through this care with a tempered grace. She neither invites pity nor refuses kindness. She accepts each as it comes and keeps her eye on tasks because tasks are where sorrow can be put without diminishing sorrow or the task. There are cases that end because a stranger does the unexpected, decent act of writing down a number tucked into the back of his mind for months. There are cases that end because a field is turned and a bone answers a question it was never meant to answer. There are cases that end because someone at a registry office grows curious and introduces one name to another, that has been waiting for it. And there are cases that do not end. This one remains in the last category, not through neglect, but through the stubbornness of fact. The officers do not claim more than this. They keep their language flat and their papers straight. Their refusal to embroider is the best they can give. In the parish, the curate, who sees more human paperwork than sermons would suggest, continues to keep a book of small mercies and hard truths. When he writes a name, it is because a baby has been brought, or a couple has stood, or a body has been carried. He does not write the boy's name. That is not the curate's fault. Registers record what is placed before them. They cannot record a street that will not explain itself. Workhouse clerks note admissions and discharges in columns whose neatness nearly makes a comfort. Nearly, but not quite. Their lines will never catch a child who does not cross the threshold. The same is true for the prison officer who counts heads and writes occupations and scars because the law requires it. The boy whose occupation is pupil, whose distinguishing mark is only that he belongs at a certain table at a certain hour, never enters the list that would give him back to the city in a different, harsher way. There is relief in that, and there is nothing like consolation. Relief and consolation are different breeds. Only one sleeps through the night. The mother sorts papers that were never meant to accumulate, receipts and letters and the clippings people thrust into her hand because they think she should have them. She keeps them in an order she can live with. The stack is never displayed. It is stored in a practical place where hand and eye can find it without unseemly fuss. When she must take it out, she takes it out and works through the pieces with the same method the officers use at the station. She answers questions when asked. She does not offer stories. Facts stand better on their own feet when they are not asked to carry the weight of human guesses. Another winter arrives, and with it the work that winter demands in houses where coal must be bought and carried. The searchers who once cut hooks through black water are assigned to other duties. They take those duties because the city keeps on. If a call comes and the call says, "Go to that pond again," they will go, and there will be no need to rehearse. Their bodies remember the task as surely as the file remembers the name. Until then, boots are mended, coats are brushed, ropes are hung, and men attend to the living calls that arrive every day, without apology. At the edge of all this diligence stands the fact that cannot be adjusted. A boy left for school and did not arrive. The case has taught everyone how to live with that fact in ways that do not deform other duties. That is a kind of success in places where tragedy is not defeated but fenced, so it does not trample the garden. The station's light burns late over ledgers that deserve it. The house's light burns early over tasks that must be done before the day begins. Between those two lights, a line of care holds. If an answer comes one morning, it will enter the day the way bread does, quietly, completely, making its way to every table without speech. The officers will write the necessary lines, and the mother will fold a paper without shaking. The pond will give nothing more than it has already given, or it will give what it kept. The ledgers will receive their date, their initials, their conclusion. If no answer comes, the discipline remains. The city knows how to keep faith without a flourish, and that is the only reason the working parts of this story still move with decency. The file sits, the name holds, the door that opened once at a boy's hand closes each night with the click that says the day is finished honestly, even if it is unfinished in the way that matters most.